Welcome to the Life in Flow podcast.
The three of us, Yulia, Polina, and Irina, are exploring what life in flow and flow in life is.
Join us as we experiment, test our diverse hypotheses, and have fun in the process.
Will we find an answer?
This isn't just an intellectual discussion. We're co-creating a shared field beyond words. We're attuning to what emerges moment by moment, so that the conversation itself becomes a group flow experience.
And we invite you to become an active participant in this experiment. There will be pauses and moments of silence. We leave them on purpose because this is where magic happens.
Go beyond the intellectual information. Listen with your whole body and notice how your somatic experience shifts in the process. Share with us what reveals itself in the space where mind, body, and energy flow together. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Life in Flow podcast. And today I'm facilitating this episode. I'm Yulia, and with me is
Polina.
And Irina?
Yes, it's a wonderful day in Berlin. Very sunny, very warm, also very dry for my plants. Thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it. You listening and also you kind of playing and sensing along. The topic of our conversation is a question. Is the world alive? And this is kind of sounds like a simple question, but at the same time, to me, it was a very dangerous question for quite a long time. Dangerous because it's like, is the world alive? What are you implying there? Are you implying that wherever my house is alive, the rocks are alive? And because I was raised, with the values of being intelligent, this, it's like there was a big contradiction there. Like, okay, you cannot be intelligent and then at the same time believe that the world is alive. So it's kind of a very, very interesting topic to me. And I didn't know that I would be able to discuss it publicly. And I'm so happy that I'm able to do that because things change. And I'm very looking forward to conversation with you today. How are you?
Great. Excited for you that you get to dive into this.
Okay, you
Let's see what we discover.
Yeah. Okay. So we will start, as we usually do, with a warm-up where we basically exchange some stories and get some ideas flowing, and then we'll exchange some more. I'll bring up a couple of questions that I haven't shared with the girls that I have come up with myself. And again, please play along, sense along, and have fun with us. Okay, so the first thing is the warm-up. So what we're gonna do, I'm going to offer a word to you, and I will ask you to come up, and myself also, to come up with some stories which are kind of short stories, but are more felt than anything. So they're like maybe some flashbacks that we could also feel with you on kind of why that story is there. And we'll make one round and see if we want to make another round. And the word for you and for me is a fairy tale.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is my relationship with the forest spirit of the forest that is nearby my parents' house. And I'm visiting them twice a year. And so every day I go for a walk to that forest. And since some years ago, I began some sort of a ritual that every time when I enter the forest, I greet the spirit. I called him the grandfather and say, "Hello, grandfather, that's me, I'm back." And it sort of feels like that there is the relationship. That because every time when I lose some things in the forest, what I do is I ask the grandfather, like, "Hey, like when you stop playing with this thing, can you please return it to me?" And he actually does. Like every time when I lose a thing, I will find it somewhere in the forest later on. And when we all were locked down for the COVID, I actually spent 5 months in my parents' house because I got locked down there. So at that period of time, I learned to collect mushrooms, which I never liked before, but I sort of have a very, like strange relationship with traditions. From one side, I want to rebel against them, and on the other side, I want to keep them. So I always like learning how to bake these pirashkis and blinis and all the other Russian stuff, the traditional stuff. And I always wanted to learn how to collect mushrooms because my father is like a fan of this stuff, and he knows a lot about them, and I knew nothing. So during that time, I started collecting mushrooms. And I remember the last day I went to the forest, like before I was about to leave to Barcelona. All of a sudden, like somehow I found a clearing in the forest that was just full of mushrooms. It was kind of like it was plagued with the mushrooms. And I was so amazed. I was like, no, yeah, really? So many? And it's all for me? And I couldn't get rid of the feeling that it was like a farewell present for me from the spirit. You're like, okay, we had fun. Here is for you. You're like, thank you, thank you. I was so excited.
Cool. So your fairy is your relationship with that forest.
I was so in Ira's story that I actually don't remember the prompt. What do we do?
It's whatever comes up for you. A story, maybe it's a small story in response to a word, a fairy tale. That's something in the moment, or that you can
Fairy tale. So many images come up with that word, you know. Uh the Red Riding Hood, or what was she called? She was called something else in Russian, so it felt like a different story. With the wolf, right? Uh and Neznaika. Remember Neznaika? Neznaika was like my go-to for so long when I was younger.
Wouldn't really call that genre fairy tales, but yeah, okay.
Oh, really? Neznaika was
Sort of
not
fantasy.
kind of fantasy, right? Because he was in the forest with all these little people and he was like finding all the stuff, like all these adventures. No?
I
Oh.
think they had a city, some
But
kind
a
of
whole
their
city that was like
dwelling.
magical, right? It wasn't like a regular city. It was, right? No?
Oh, yeah, there is magic there. Yeah. Okay.
For
Yeah.
me, for me, Neznaika was all about like adventure and exploration, and that was kind of the, I guess, through line to other fairy tales about what is what is a fairy tale. Um, I loved going in all those adventures, but I guess a more traditional fairy tale. I have lots of philosophical questions that come up around it.
Okay. Well, I can share kind of like my what comes up to a fairy tale, and it's usually like your parents. My parents would read me fairy tales, and I would be dreaming. I would be imagining myself being this princess and wearing this beautiful dress. And it's like this is quite a, I guess, common traditional thing to do. And then, oh, it felt so good to believe even for moments that this could be true, and that's, the princess could be there, I could be the princess, and then I could find this wooden stick, and it would be magic stick, and there would be magic. And then, of course, as you grow up, or even like as things happen, it's like realize, well, no, that is not possible, and you get this, I think, constantly. Well, I got this constantly growing up, that this is fairy tales, that they don't have a place in a real life or in the life of an adult, and that felt very sad. And then at one point, I experienced something that disproved it. And it felt like, whoa, yeah, I knew it. Yeah.
I actually never identified with the princess. For me, it was all about kind of the storyline, the adventure, then the good and the bad, like all those dynamics between people. And I actually really did not believe the magical aspects. It
Mm.
was kind of a normal aspect. I never considered whether it would actually translate to reality or not. It was more about like just being in it and like analyzing it.
Mhm. And so we're more like Baba Yaga, or if not princess, or did you
No, I
yourself
think
to
I would
any of the
be,
characters?
no, I would be more the observer of the thing, except for in the case of Neznaika, I was definitely with him on the all the adventures.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
Neznaika is your hero. How interesting.
Not that he's my hero, but I got to do all these cool things with him, and like explore the world in ways that I didn't get a chance to, I think, in real life. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and for those who's not familiar with the Russian language, Neznaika translate literally as not knowing, someone who doesn't know, and that's why he
Yeah.
was often made fun of. But actually, he was the character that we were to empathize with, and he would be making discoveries, having adventures, and all this.
I think he more embodied the sense of like the beginner's mind. I know that probably he had a negative connotation in our culture, but I didn't see him that way. I saw it as a beginner's mind in terms of exploration. No? Ir, did he?
Well, I I don't think that he had a negative connotation. Like there is some aspect of like the fool that always gets out of situations on pure luck.
Yeah.
But it's like it's the kind of thing. It's a trick. He's the trickster for kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think like everyone loved him. But I think it's also worth to mention to our listeners that it's actually like we're talking about the character, the main character of the very popular book series and the animation movies from Soviet Union. They were extremely popular in Soviet Union in our time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never read Neznaika. I never. It was never my favorite story, but I do resonate with what Yulia shared regarding like is fairy tale real or is it really true that it can't be real? Because I am a very avid reader of fantasy books. And one of the reasons why I like reading them so much because they exactly give me back this sensation, this feeling of magic. And like when I get inside a book that I like a lot, I walk in the world, even when I'm not reading, really feeling this sensation that like everything is speaking to me and there is this some kind of like thread of connection between the world and me that go beyond just the physical interaction. And every time when my rational mind start questioning my magical experiences and saying like, no, I'm just imagining things, it's all not true, it can't be, there is another more rational explanation, or it's just your imagination, because I have a very vivid imagination. In the end, I always come to the conclusion, you know what? I don't care. I just don't want to live in the world where there is no magic, because it just gives this feeling of awe that I feel in the body, and like I don't want to live without it.
It gives us a sense of like there's more. I don't even know how we would have weathered the Soviet era if there weren't fairy tales. It was like the most sort of creative, like there's more energetics out in the world, there's magic. To me, it was definitely an escape to other realities. Or like the possibility of it, right? The possibility that there's something beyond this reality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, interestingly, fantasy books and fantasy series are the most read ever books, the most watched ever series. I mean, like if you look at anything, any aspect of our lives, including, well, computer games or anything out there, actually, it's all soaked with magic and magical characters and magical, I guess, processes and happenings and stuff like that. So it's interesting that we're like such a rational society that is also obsessed with.
Yeah, well, some people would say that it's just the escapism that, we don't know. People who don't know how to be in this reality, they want to escape to the imagined world because it's easier that way. Like it's easier to imagine yourself to be in the world when you just can do things like this and everything happens according to your wishful thinking.
Yeah. So that brings me to my first question, actually. What does it mean the world is alive? What does it mean for you? And how maybe because we started discussing magic, how magic fits into this?
I think there are several aspects to the way how I at least look at this question, because yes, there is an aspect of like I do believe, and for me it's not just the matter of the mental belief, it's the matter of really of felt experience, that everything has some sort of consciousness. It might not be exactly as we imagine what consciousness is, so it's not
Yeah.
anthropomorphical. It's not like human-like consciousness. Although, we have no idea what human-like consciousness is either. But it does have, something beyond just the physical form. And there's something that is, connects everything to everything. So this is the dwelling of the magic, when we peer behind the veil and are able to somehow act in the world, not just from the physical action, but through operating these hidden threats. But I think that when we are talking about is the world alive, for me there is also another aspect, as considering the world as it is, like as an actor in itself, something that has its own agency. And this is, I think, is very complicated and complex question, because again, whenever we attribute an agency to someone or something, we tend to give this agency like human-like aspects. And I don't think that, so I do believe that the world as an agent with whom, with what we can interact somehow, is alive. But does not mean that it has like a rational mind or human-like consciousness. It's something else. But there are the threads of communication and interaction. Whether we are aware of them or not.
I want to hear what Yula has to say on this topic before I chime in. I need a little more to tune into this.
Yeah. So what does it mean that the world is alive for me? I actually came to experience kind of aliveness in quite direct ways. Really experiencing that whatever it is I'm interacting with, be it trees, that is kind of easier, right? With trees, they're established by science as being sentient beings. And I mean, they have extensive communication networks, they have intelligence, their intelligence evolved much earlier, and they were able to live and survive in more diverse conditions than human beings. I mean, they're like much more ancient, right? As well as a lot of other animals. But with, then we come, of course, to rocks and to objects that surround us. Are they also alive? And yeah, I mean, how do I say it without sounding stupid? I think that they, you just, when you allow them to be alive, they become alive because, somehow the filter through which you perceive the world starts allowing for different signals to come through somehow. Yeah, and also an interesting thing, I actually listened to a podcast yesterday about on this topic, one of my favorite podcasts that I have shared with you girls, the Emerald podcast. Actually, I was like, I was looking for some inspiration because the episode is around also, is this world alive? Are there objects or not really? And one of the things that I really loved, he said, is stones have a billion-year agenda. Because a lot of people in these discussions, there's like, okay, but you wouldn't say that the rocks and stones, that they have some, whatever, that they're alive. Yeah, and yet even the modern science is now saying that there is no clear border between being alive and not being alive, because our cells, all of them, technically they're not alive, and yet when they come together, something makes them alive. And that something, for example, are some planets like the moon. Without the moon, there wouldn't be life on Earth. There also are stones and rocks. For example, the fact that we're hearing each other now is due to us having, due to the rocks, liquid minerals like zinc for hearing. And then like we're seeing each other because also the liquid matrix, the conductors and semiconductors. Yeah, so a little bit incoherent, but anyway,
What
I
does
think
it mean?
everything is alive.
Well, what does it mean that the rocks have an agenda? Can you give a little bit more context on that?
Well, what I understood by this is that, I mean, the rocks are the most ancient beings on Earth. The rocks also are a very unique thing about the Earth, where its history is recorded, unlike any other known planet, where this recording is not happening for various reasons because the conditions somehow are not allowing for this. So Earth is kind of, well, I heard this as an essay, also from actually a scientist, and she's saying like rocks are where Earth is keeping its history. And so with all that history, the rocks or the liquid minerals are ubiquitous nowadays. I mean, of course, there are people who mm, mm, like make pilgrimage to see rocks, right? There are rocks for whom people fight, or minerals like emeralds or whatever. And there's also the conductors, for example. Your phone is is only there because they're liquid minerals. And so this is, I guess, what is meant by stones have a billion-year agenda.
I also would take it is that, because if we assume that there is a consciousness in a rock, but it's just like from the point of view of transformation of the physical form, the time flows very differently for this consciousness rather than for us. So the agenda of this consciousness will be like for million years, because this is the time of their processes.
I'm trying to tune in to what both of you said, and also trying to tune in to where do I land on this topic right now. The only thing that I'm accessing is, I mean, as the two of you know, I kind of see everything as frequencies and right energy. And I know that rocks, for example, have an ability to hold energy, right? Because you could feel different things if you touch different things. Um, so from that perspective, I would say everything is alive, but also because I know everything's made up of molecules. Now, the consciousness aspect, I think, is a little bit, well, yeah, because I mean, through our human mind, I would only understand consciousness as in terms of us, right? Our consciousness.
We don't even understand our consciousness.
Exactly. Exactly. So, in terms of data, I mean, if energy contains data, then that means from that perspective, we could make the leap to say everything is alive because everything has an energetic frequency to it, which has data in it. So, if data is in some way also related to consciousness, then it's all kind of contained in it.
I
Yeah.
have a question for you. So, like, how do you connect the data to being alive?
Well, because I mean, the experiments have shown, right, that things have different like actual frequencies, like energetic signatures, and there must be some sort of data that kind of keeps that thing together in its form, right? So whatever it is that makes up that thing, that frequency, and then also the rules for that frequency to create what we perceive as a thing, an object or a tree or it's funny because when originally we started talking about this topic, I actually sensed there was a bit of resistance about everything is alive. I have a bit of resistance to it because if everything's alive, that means that I need to be even more aware and conscious than I already am. Like I have to, like step into the consideration of everything around me even more with even more awareness than now, which requires like it at first it seems like, oh shit, I don't have the resources for this, but then I know that's just a mental construct around it. But it does make me question, like, okay, so if everything is alive, I really could interact with it as in a different way than I have been.
That is super interesting. So yeah, I guess like, how does it change things?
Well, I don't know if I consider things in my environment Like even the whole tree thing, right? It was because of you that I started paying attention to trees and starting to be like a little bit more aware and conscious about, okay, what is there with this tree, which requires more openness, more actual curiosity, right? It's another kind of aspect of how to be when I go outside, or even when I sit here and I look at the tree outside my house. But now, if we're talking about everything is alive, then I could consider making room in my consciousness and awareness for this table and this monitor and this mirror, like in some other kind of way, maybe which would make me reference myself even more in this time and space, which actually could be great. But it's a new concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have you ever had any stories, Polina or Irina, when you had something, maybe a car, I think it's a rather common story, which you kind of have a relationship with and you know its character and you can tell what it's gonna do or might do, and not necessarily a car, with anything.
I doesn't come to my mind right now a specific story, but this is exactly one of the points that I even had noted down while I was listening to you, Yulia, because it's really such a common pattern, like that we are talking to our computers, we are talking to our cars in the hope for them to keep certain behavior or adjust their behavior when like we need different results from what we're getting from them, and it works. Actually, yeah, it's not with me, but I remember just with the car, it was one of my first jobs, so it was still in Moscow many decades ago. Um, we were going to corporate event, I guess. So I was going in a car with the two of other girls from the office, and one was driving a corporate car because she was like salesperson or something like this. I don't remember. And so we get into the car. I think it was winter, so the weather was not very favorable really for the car to start, and the car was given a problem. And so like one girl, no, I think the one who was driving was very irritated, and she was like, what are you doing, like this bad car. I don't want to use bad words. So like, it's not working, why it's not working? And the other one who was sitting at the passenger seat, or maybe not, I don't remember whose car it was, but like, so one was very pissed off and irritated, and the other one was said, no, wait, you are not doing it right. You need to be gentle. And she started caressing the interior of the car and saying like, hey, look, darling, please, could you please just start up? And because we need to go, you're very good, we're very grateful. And it worked. It started. And we were able to go. And like, we probably have heard many stories like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Pauline, and to what you shared, this is what I have been experiencing, that it is kind of taking more energy, but definitely a very big shift that may be also energy draining, because one of the things is that you are opening up and you don't want to be open all the time, right? So you want to regulate your state and what you're open to and what you're not open to. But then also another thing is that when you acknowledge this agency of anything, it's kind of you feel that more reciprocity is needed, somehow more respect is needed, a different type of behavior and being is needed. That's been my experience. So I'm still kind of like even regulating myself into a state where I can handle it without getting too exhausted. I don't know.
Yeah, but I also have a different perspective on this. Like we can't take into account everything because exactly it's the matter of resources. Our RAM memory doesn't allow us to take into account everything at any moment. So, do you take into account all people? Even the one who you are meeting on the street, most of them, if they're not of big concern for you, you're ignoring them because this data, if we're talking in terms of data, at this moment is not relevant for your experience.
Yeah.
So I think with all the rest is the same.
Yeah, it's a matter of what are you focusing on and how are you using your focus. And we only have a certain, I think, mechanism of lens, like, right? The lenses that we have in terms of like, are we in the observer self? Are we zooming out and trying to take like kind of the energetic frequency of the entire space into account? Are we specifically focusing on this one leaf? I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of data. Like that's what it feels like when I consider this. There's just so much data, and I can only process so much at a time. But also in the processing, like what you said, it really does take resources, and what you're saying too, Ir. Um, and yet I think there's also another aspect when I reference the space and time and me rendering in the space and time, which includes, my distance to the objects around me and also the energetic referencing, like am I connected to whatever's above and below, like the earth, the ground, whatever it is in that moment. There is more available, like even in terms of me, more of me is available, even though I'm using resources to reference and take into account the things, around me. Does that make sense when I'm describing?
What do you mean? But there is more of you available.
Like more energy, more resources.
More presence, which has some kind of intelligence to it that is not the same if I'm not in that state. Maybe a more intelligent mechanism for processing the data. Like that's how I would describe it. It's hard because we don't usually talk about the stuff, right? So I'm like trying to tune in right now, like for the first time, like a baby.
Really hard to talk about this. Yeah, for me also.
Did I understand it right that you said that like if you take into account the aliveness of more things around you, then you become more present?
Not aliveness, because I haven't consciously specifically tuned into that aspect yet, but I will after this episode. But more like the fact that these things are here and
Okay.
what am I, how am I rendering also in relation to those things. I haven't taken it to this next level of the aliveness aspect, but just in terms of like they're also in the space and I'm in the space, and that kind of tunes into something more intelligent in terms of my embodiment. But I wonder what will happen if I really have the intention of also tuning into the aliveness of the thing, of the things in the environment. I know that when I sit, there's this really cool secret spot where I live on a bluff. And the bluffs in San Diego tend to come down sometimes, so it's actually a bit dangerous. But when I go there, I do, not that I ask like, hey, let me know if you're about to go, but I do tune in to like, are you feeling safe today? Will and I do ask to receive a message if there is instability coming, and like so that I know and I can leave. And I've been doing this silently with myself, so I've never verbalized it to anyone. And it's also such a weird thing, but I do energetically tune into that aspect that, and I believe that I will receive the message when it's no longer stable and I will know. That goes to, right, this topic.
Yeah, but there are different ways of interpreting it. So, like, one way of looking at it is that there could be something that we could ascribe some kind of agency that gives you the answer, or it could be that just you tuning in to the data available that tells you if it's safe for you or not.
That is true, but I specifically was tuning into the bluff itself and also the roots of the trees. There's this really cool trunk that's dead, but it's still in the ground. And I don't know why, and I don't know if I've ever even thought about it this way until we started doing this whole project and experiment, and Yulia started tuning me into trees, period. But I really did specifically have the intention of tuning into the bluff itself and the tree trunk that they will let me know, because for some reason I sense that they will have access to that data, and that if I'm tuned into it, that we can have that conversation, or like at least messaging system, which it sounds wild and it's crazy, but there's something there.
I don't think it sounds wild and crazy
I
messaging.
mean, to the old version of me, right? The version that comes from, you know, where we come from, and all the intellectual and information and only data in the thinking channel, right? Like to that part. I mean, this is a little on the fringe, and yet it makes sense.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience. I was at my wilderness education module, and the topic was birds. I shared with you, and so we were learning about birds through exploring and making experiments. And one big insight for me, also, it was like, okay, you feel I love watching birds. Well, the birds that I have in my garden and the trees anyway. But it's always kind of like there's this wall or something, and they're very distant. And then one of the things and practices that we did, actually, we're sharing common nonverbal communication language, right? So one of the things we were like trying to not scare off the birds by showing them in our human ways through our signaling system, some of which we share with the birds, that we are not dangerous and that we are not staring at them, and that we are also kind of like picking up some stuff from the ground. It was so fun. And I guess, yeah, and for me it was like, wow, we're also like we're sharing things, we're sharing signals, we're sharing information. Well, that's not like, of course that wasn't with a rock, right? But it still was a big highlight for me.
Wait, that's so cool. Can I share what came up for me when you were describing that?
Mhm.
I just made the connection that giving eye contact to birds may not be the right human animal cue. And I never thought about that. I'm always trying to connect to them with my eyes, and that never works. And yesterday, my partner verbalized that he can only hold my gaze for a
Mhm.
very short amount of time, because for him, his experience of my gaze is very intense. And I was like, what? What is that? What is that about? You know, because it's not like I'm always, but I think there's, it helped me tune into this aspect of like seeing each other, looking at each other. Not everyone's nervous system is able to maintain that energetic exchange for a certain amount of time. And so now that you talked about the birds, I was like, oh my God, maybe I need to try to not give them eye contact and just be more in the my animal, like you said, like kind of mirror the like it's safe. I wonder what would happen. I think I overuse my eyes to tune in, but really maybe I need to use some other senses like in the physical body to do that because that's what they do, right? They are more in their whole physical body, not just their eyes. Like now that we're talking about it and I'm tuning in. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I think so. In the interest of time,
Yeah.
that was a super interesting conversation and diversion, but nonetheless. And so hope everyone is well. And the next question and the last question for today is, so what does it change experiencing the world as alive? And Panil, you started kind of touching on this through your experiences, but what else? Before and after.
Well, I don't think that for me there was before and after.
Mm.
I guess I never stopped. There was time when I was more proponent to to punish myself for imagining things, and then I just said, you know what? Like I said, I don't want to live in the world without magic. That for me is the same as I just don't want to live in the world that is not alive. For me, it's about meaning. It just makes every experience much more meaningful.
Hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is like, like all these stories, again, when something happens, which like an accident or a tragedy, something that a person finds hard to accept or to live through the experience. And then in the end, when we go through it, somehow we're able to see that, like, for example, like the hypothetical situation, the person works a lot and is really on the brink of the burnout, and then he or she gets into the accident and has to spend several months in bed because the whole system was not able to sustain that rhythm anymore. So something in the system around this person had to create this accident to allow for the rest that the person's mind did not allow, rationally, consciously. And I don't believe in the guardian angels that, like, some might interpret it that it's your guardian angel and your guides or whoever, some spirits arranged that to happen. I believe more that it's this self organizing system that arranges to itself in order to allow for a certain element that needs to be emerged to emerge. And in this case, this element is the state of rest for the person.
Yeah. A pause, a pivot, a rest, whatever. Yeah.
What is the before and after? Before this conversation, after this conversation, or a different before and after?
Before you accept that the world is alive.
Ah,
and maybe you're not there yet, Pauline, but just then what does it mean? What does it change? How does it change your life or the world
no,
when
I mean,
you
I think I am there from the energy perspective. I've always been there, but what it does change because of this conversation and how we're engaging with it is it changes how I will, I guess, the awareness aspect and how do I engage with the environment. Um, Maybe I will consider objects more and um we'll have to play with it a little bit. I have to like tune in a little bit more. I remember you told me to start tuning into the ocean, and I do, but it is a different type of frequency, and so it's like a big experiment. Also, tuning in with birds is weird. So like I think I need to practice a different way of tuning in to some things that maybe have other operating systems. Like the ocean has a different operating system than a human. So there's a bird. So how do you tune into that operating system? I'm not sure, but I want to play with it.
yeah. I guess for me, one of the things was very liberating. Like, it was so liberating. Oh my God, it was like a big burden off my shoulders because big theme, my personal, and I think actually it's applies to a lot of people, is that we see ourselves as the ultimate force, although there is a lot of blah 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 on that. Well, yes, but what can you control and what can you not control? Until you have this experience, you still you all your whatever conditioning, the whole life in of the rational mind in this rational era, it it nails into you almost that no, if something doesn't happen right, then it's up to you, okay? Up to you also to fix it. It's like for a long time, it was just so exhausting. And I was trying so many things. Okay, how about I breathe? How about to do this, that? It's like a whole job for regulating myself. And then all of a sudden, when you see the world as alive, when you see, getting back to the stones having a billion-year agenda, when you see the like a ancient intelligence of whatever trees and plants and how they also have their agenda, I was like, whoo, a sigh of relief. Wow, it's not all up to me. I just like I can take a back seat and relax because in the grand scheme of things, I am nothing. I'm just riding some huge wave. And I do have kind of like, of course, some agency in how I ride that wave, but then it's like just relax, okay? So this was like really, really huge.
Yeah, that I can relate to. Yeah, that point of before and after did exist in my life. Like when you really, like as we discussed in the discussion on trust, like when you make this leap of faith, and it's like coming back to the question of flow, life and flow. Yeah, like there is this certain moment when you decide to surrender the control and you stop considering yourself as the only agent that is responsible for everything that happens in your life. And it does involve attributing like the agency to life itself. and you go through, you're like, at least in my case, it was like, yeah, there was a big period of time when it was just the exercise in surrendering control. And okay, so like, I let myself flow with life. Exactly. And for me, that was okay. So like, I believe that this thing is alive and it is bigger than me. So I'm just surrendering to it.
Mm.
And it still continues to be constant exercise, but because I still tend to sometimes to try to control things too much when I'm forgetting to trust in my ability to sustain any experience. But it also like becomes more and more the process of co-creation, because as I said, okay, life itself has an agency, but I also am an agent of life. So this flow, it's the co-creation together of me and all the other things alive around me and what I'm connected with. And going back to the question, what changes? You know, like if the world is alive, it just becomes much more fun. Mm-hmm. Because if there are so many agents you can interact with and co-create with, and also tune in into the whole data of the system itself that is alive and self-organizing and wise somehow. Like, wow, there are so many things to play and flow with and have so many different experiences. It's much more fun than rather than this, constant grind of, goal setting and achieving and demonstrating something.
That really makes a lot of sense. A bunch of self-organizing systems with their own agenda is another topic I want to talk about. That word agenda, like what does that mean? And also agency, what does that mean? I think that could be a whole other several episodes. But the image you were drawing really made sense. All these different things in the field that have their own self-organizing um uh programming or frequency or whatever you want to call it. And then also the bigger system, itself. And then all of those things coming together and it totally makes sense. It also feels to me when I made that shift, also felt much more relaxing. It's not like I am this controlling agent that can control all the very. No, I'm just like a small piece of a bunch of other pieces there, and we're all doing kind of the best we can as we are interacting with one another. And I think I could have an effect on aspects of it. The more self-regulated I am, the more self-aware I am, the more I do consider things around me and their self-organizing capacities. I think there is more agency in that way. Um, but it also takes away the need to take things personally when things don't go your way because listen, there's so many things going on. I mean, okay, sometimes the organizing agents are not like this is how things turn out because this is how things came together, so it's not necessarily that this accident had to happen, but there were lots of things coming together and the accident happened because also you were on the verge of burnout. Right? So it's not necessarily like, oh, personal. It's just there's things beyond our awareness and ability to comprehend that are all coming together. Yeah. Sorry, that was a
And
big
also
roundabout.
kind of already need to be wrapping up, but this is I love how it's now turning out where we are at this moment. And I think one more thing, Pauline, as you were talking again about the accident and what would be happening, what could be happening there. I think also as you acknowledge the agency and aliveness of this world, you have kind of more respect and a better ability to tuning in what's happening, and some tips like you sitting on the rock I forgot how you called it.
On the bluff, yeah.
Yeah, and um it's like, you have kind of like more trust and intuition and your senses, which you cannot even verbalize, of course, because the other categories of beings, they don't speak your language, but there is some signaling going on. So that opens up actually a much better way to also flow and adjust the direction, because you now respect this major source of information and are more respectful and attentive to it.
And you have more access. Remember when I started with you have more access, like more intelligence is available, even though there's more resources required, but there's more intelligence available, like you said, and definitely that trust piece. Because when I'm tuning into the bluff and that tree trunk, I am trusting that they are hearing me and we're having a conversation and that, like a communication of sorts, and that I will receive a message. So also to your point, Ian, with the trust piece.
Yeah. Okay, so I could go on, but let's wrap it up. Yeah, what are we living with, each of us?
I'm living with rocks as Earth's historians. I love this part.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'm leaving with I'm gonna play more with the things in the field.
Yeah, I'm living with this really good kind of feeling and having fun that I guess maybe I didn't really, it was more challenging than fun at the beginning, because this is for me also, I do not usually talk about this with people. And so verbalizing some stuff as if for the first time, it maybe felt a little bit challenging, but then there was, this flow, I guess. So I had a lot of fun discussing it today, and maybe it wasn't perfect. And of course, there are so many more things to be said about this topic, but it was a cool start.
I totally agree with you. I felt like we were very careful. There were we weren't that flowy for like almost 2/3 of this conversation because it was, yeah, it was a different type of topic to engage with. I felt like, oh, I'm not really, I don't know how to connect to this. I don't know where the kind of the receptor is for this conversation in some ways. And then eventually towards the end, something shifted and I was like, oh, here it is. Here's the flow. And things started flowing more between us. Yeah. I wonder what that trigger point was in the conversation.
Well, I think this topic is definitely a big one, and there are a lot of more aspects that could be discussed, and I hope that we'll discuss them. Wait for the fun we will have when we talk about the origins of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
That will be fun.
Okay, well, Carlson, thank you so much for this discussion, and thank you everyone who was listening. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, also got to experience some things, to play with us and to sense with us. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. How was it for you? We believe that the more people experience group flow together, the better off we all are. More connected, more creative, more alive. So let's expand the field.
If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word. Share it with a friend, leave a comment, or give us a rating. We love you.
Do subscribe so you'll know when the next experiment comes out. You can also connect with us on our Life and Flow group Substack. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep flowing together.